everybody, it's been a few days and we are back out here working on the house. I went ahead and started kind of making some of our bottom plates that's got to go all around the ICFs. And I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so here's the basic concept. My bottom plate, because my ICF walls are 13 inches wide, my bottom plate is actually a 2x12. And this is the Prowood 2x12, so it's actually straight line ripped on both sides, which takes it down to 11 inches even, not 11 1/4 like a normal 2x12. So it's great because I've got some good straight edges here, but also what I have to do is, the wall is 13 inches wide. I have 8 inches of concrete, so I've got 2.5 inches of foam on each side of that. So at 11 inches, I'm going to set the sill flush to the inside, and then it's going to hang over the outside of the styrofoam about 1/2 3/4 of an inch. So what I've done here is I'm prepping all of my sills. We already had to put all this bracing in, and then put this blocking in the end, because as we pour concrete, these are obviously open on the end, so the concrete will just want to sort of flow out. But how we have to think about this is very process oriented, okay? You got to think, as soon as you get concrete to fill up to here, as soon as it wants to start filling this cavity, the pressure of the concrete is going to make that concrete want to slough out of the top of this bay. So what we have to do is go ahead and pre-make all of our sills for all of these step downs. Now the design here is that my blocks on the end are flush with the top of the ICF, and then when we put these on, they're flush with the top of the ICF, but there's an 1.5 inch gap at the bottom. So what we'll do is we'll grab our bottom plate. I've got my anchor bolts already installed. I've got my sill seal already installed, so the concrete will come up against this. Once this cavity is full, then we will be able to take this, slide this in, drop it, come out here flush to here, knock this in, and what we'll be able to do now is, since we're under this next block and this is all connected through this bracing, it can't lift up this way, and then we've got some good 2x material down here that we'll put screws in, so basically it'll keep all this in place. And once the concrete's in there, we'll wet set these, we'll drop them down to the desired height, and then we'll tighten these down after it's all said and done. So that's what I came up for the sills. I think it's going to work. I think it's going to work really well. So let me show you how I made it. By the way, I am using the Pika Big Dry carpenter pencil. It's really great. I just got it and I've been using it so far on this project. I really like it. I like the sheath. I like to keep it up here. Also, my skill saw is the DeWalt Flexible 60 volt max 7 1/4 left side blade, right hand drive, whatever you want to call it. It's a very heavy duty saw, but it's also very heavy. My buddy Shane has a Milwaukee that feels like it's at least a couple pounds lighter, and then obviously Makita I think is the lightest one on the market, but it's a really good saw. It feels indestructible, but you definitely feel the weight of it when you're using it. So I am now cut to length, and how I'm doing my anchor bolts in our code, in our part of Montana, the code is, if it's at the end of the plate, it's got to be within 12 to 18 inches of the end of the plate. So what I'm going to do is, for the very end of the sill, I'm going to come in 12 inches, 1 foot, and then since we're going to be tucked in on this side, 1.5 inches, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in 2 feet. Now another thing I had to consider is the overall width of the block, obviously, and then the overall width of my plate, and where that will determine that I want my anchor bolts. So basically I want my anchor bolts dead center of the concrete inside the wall. So there's 8 inches here, which means 4 inches is the dead center, 2.5 inches of foam. So basically we're going to go, and I'm putting the plate flush with the inside of the block. So 4 inches in plus the 2.5, so I'm going to set my anchor bolts 6.5 inches in from the inside edge of the sill. So I've got my 12 inches from one side, 24 inches from this side. So basically what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my speed square, come to 6.5, mark it, speed square, 6.5, mark it, and I know this is my inside. Put an arrow to the edge. People that do this stuff all the time, they just get the muscle memory and they just remember these things. I don't do a whole lot of framing. It's usually a year or two in between framing stuff since I'm not a general contractor anymore. So I just find it really helpful to always take notes and remind myself where I'm at. Okay, now we've got our anchor bolt location established. So what I'm gonna do is grab a 1/2-inch spade bit because my anchor bolts are 1/2-inch J bolts. Okay, so this is the top of my sill. So what I want to do is I need to flip this over, and I'm going to use sill sealer. This is 5.5-inch 50-foot roll, and this is going to be basically a moisture barrier in between my wood, even though it's treated, in between my wood and the concrete. And basically, since you see this when you're framing onto a slab, you got to put this under your treated bottom plate. This goes in between the slab and the treated bottom plate so you can start framing your walls. It's just a moisture barrier. Any moisture that's coming out of the concrete to wick up into the wood, this just kind of helps alleviate some of that. And what I'm doing, since I'm not able to attach these just yet, is I'm just taking a staple gun and I'm just putting some staples in it. And it's just going to hold it there until we're ready to install. I will take my 2 anchors and I will, where are we at here? There you are. Then run those through. And then I've got a washer and a 1/2-inch nut here. And I will just put these on temporarily. Because the idea here is when we pour the concrete, we will, I think I mentioned, but we will push these anchor bolts down into the concrete as much as we want, at least 4 to 6 inches. And then we will let these set. And then after it's all set, we'll pull these back off. And I actually have something called a bearing plate, which is a big steel, it's like 3/16 of an inch thick, that's gonna go underneath of this washer and this bolt. So yeah, this one's done. It's ready to get set in place. Make sure your 2-foot end is in the correct spot. All right, and there you have it. So when we're ready to pour concrete, we'll just pull these back out. I'll label them, I'll number them. And as we keep filling up layers, I'll just keep putting the caps in. We'll run the screws on the ends, pull these up, wet set these to where they need to be, and let them hang. I got the south side done. I think what I'm gonna do before I start doing all the long pieces is just go ahead and knock out all these little guys. So I've got 4 more to do at 26 inches, so I'm just gonna knock those out. And since it's so small up there, and I've got that 1.5 inches of the block to keep it from uplifting, instead of coming in 12 inches in the center, I'm actually going to come in 8 inches from the very end, kind of even out the pressure or weight displacement, whatever you want to call it, a little bit. I also just picked up the IsoTunes Aware 2.0s. I've been using the DeWalt ones for a long time, but man, I bought like 3 or 4 of them, and they are just terrible after like 6 months of use. So I finally just went ahead and bought some of these. These are rated for hearing protection, Bluetooth, listen to music, talk on the phone, and they're also the awares. So they're almost like there's microphones on the outside, and when it senses a certain decibel level, it'll hush everything down, but you can wear them all day long and still hear everything around you, hence the aware technology. The only issue I found with the ISO-tunes so far is that they are randomly connecting and disconnecting from my cell phone. So if anybody knows what that's all about, please leave a comment or something down there. See if there's a setting that I need to do or what's going on. That is a wonky piece of sill seal. That's all right. We're gonna use it anyway. Trim the fan, no big deal. Beautiful. 3 more to go. Okay, so what I did here is I can't really attach this, but I need it to mark out my next one. So alright, so yeah, my microphone fell off, that board clipped it when I picked it up, so basically all I'm saying here is that I labeled that far end of the board, basically put a little note on it that says that what side goes to the inside and which end goes to the corner, so when the concrete starts flowing we don't get all confused and turned around. So now that we're on to the full 16-foot lengths of these boards, I'm basically just explaining how I'm going to start a foot in from the end per our code, and then I'm going to go 4 feet on center for each following bolt, and then obviously a foot in from the other end as well. Mark. What's crazy is that microphone is just laying on the ground like 50 feet away from where I'm standing right there, and it's still picking up all of this. Now, as you can see, that wall is not straight anymore. With me getting up and down, taking measurements, and then we had some pretty gnarly winds there for a few days, that wall got knocked out. So basically what we did was the morning of concrete pour, we went out there and just fortified the hell out of it and straightened it all out. Whew, okay. Making me wish I would have called somebody to help me with this today, but I think we're doing all right. Just got about two and some change more to go that way, and then it'll wrap around. So alright, well that's pretty much it. We got all the top plates on, all the way down, all my step downs on both sides, and then all the way around the top. We do have a frost wall in the front here, but our slab is actually going to come over and meet the top of that and tie it all together, 3-bar and all that kind of stuff, so I don't need to do any down there. So thank you for watching this video. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe if you have any questions about any of this stuff, if you have any pointers, any of that kind of stuff on here. Next on the list is I have to build a wooden substructure that goes inside of the ICFs here to actually pour concrete around, and it's going to be basically a wooden structure that I can set a window in, and it's called a window buck. So I'm going to show you how I build that as well.